Previously on the Shawn Ryan Show. What was the conversations that sparked this whole thing?
It all started with TMZ.
Are there common characteristics to the UAPs that have been cited by different pilots, and can you describe what the convergence of descriptions is?
Certainly. We were primarily seeing dark gray or black cubes inside of a clear sphere.
I'm sorry, dark gray or black cubes?
2 military pilots, best in the world, best trained, best aircraft, everything. Sworn testimony, swear to God, and before Congress, and that they had chased a craft.
Mr. Graves, again, I'd like to know, how do you know that these were not our aircraft?
When we come back, we will unpack the actual hearing. All right, Tim, we're back from the break. We're getting ready to dive into the UAP hearing. But before that, there have been a couple other things in the news lately that actually both this month that I'd like to get your thoughts or maybe a little bit of a debrief on it. One being the hearing with NASA. What happened there?
I think, like the Pentagon, the other agencies, I think they're realizing, again, America believes, and the world, frankly, believes we're not alone. I think they smell dollars. NASA is, they're always hungry for money. They're trying to get to Mars. They're trying to do all this other stuff. Again, since 1947 at least, our government's been lying to us. Now all of a sudden they want money to study the issue. And I just, the folks that they had come talk to us the other day, I didn't know that the press wasn't invited. I would have not come to the meeting if I'd have known that, actually, because it was, they talked about nothing, and they talked about if something was spotted, who would be in charge of it. I think somebody even tweeted about it that, it'd be the Space Force. There again, you're your own agency. And then they talked about how they wanted to get with the other agencies, and so they collaborate. That's the big word they always use. That's sort of a think tank word, collaborate. You hear that a lot, like these leadership groups. We're gonna collaborate, and I think that's what it's just about money. They just want more money to study it, and I say, just turn loose the files, turn loose of everything you got. And then they said, well, what if you saw them with a telescope? Well, we wouldn't see a UFO with a telescope. And they said, and these people said, nothing we have is confidential. That's what they said. Nothing NASA has is confidential. Now think about that. Satellite imagery, all this other stuff is not confidential. So
are they saying it's not confidential?
Entire NASA was not confidential. So
I guess what I'm saying is it below? Are they saying everything is below confidential, or are they saying everything is above confidential? Because confidential,
they said it is not confidential.
So that could be secret and top secret, or that could be completely unclassified.
Well, speaking out of both sides of their mouth, actually, because as it turns out, they have satellite imagery, and they just said what they were saying was everything they have is open to the public.
Open source.
Open to the public. So I just don't buy that. And again, I think those people there, put them on a lie detector, they're telling the truth for what they knew. They're just the little compartmentalized bureaucrats that they were, and that's all their little world. That's all their little world was their little world, and that's all they knew. But again, it just boiled down to dollars. And I asked them, I said, how are we supposed to believe y'all that all of a sudden you want to study these things when you've told us they don't exist? They didn't really have a clear answer.
Nothing?
It was just like a lawyer.
So,
not a very good one at that.
So are they just asking for money? Like that's literally
they were saying, well, no, we're just doing it. We're studying it within our own purview. But if you read the report, though, the first paragraph, it talks about I think it's robust resources. We will be using robust resources to study. Now, where are they going to get that money? They're going to take it away from their the ships, rockets they're sending to Mars or to the moon again, or what? And no, they got to come up with new money. And that again, this is just feeding the kitty. That's all they're doing. And you know, you have several different agencies, what I've found out, have said they don't exist. Now several different agencies say they do exist, and they're going to start studying them. So what has changed?
I don't know, but you know, we kind of, I mean, let's talk about the money. We talked about this on a little warm-up video, but you know, what I don't understand is there's all the black budget programs, and we had talked about all the money that's going to Ukraine, and which is basically feeding the military-industrial complex companies, which are overcharging the government, and that's how we both believe that these black projects are being funded by overcharging the government other areas and then funneling that money in. So do you think that they just believe this is an easy grab now that UFO, UAP
statistically, and then when you see Schumer's come forward with his thing, and then I see all these UFO people saying, "Are you getting on board, Schumer's? We've got somebody that's really turned on." I mean, you got the swampiest of swamp creatures. I mean, I don't knock him. Every time I've met him and talked to him, he's been nothing but nice to me. But you know, it's just about money. We take in $5 trillion a year, and they want to spend over $7 trillion, and that's a conservative approach to these folks.
Wow. So did NASA? Do they get in depth on what they're going to spend the money on, or is it just, hey, we need more money because we want to study these things? Are they saying, hey,
they couldn't get real specific again, and it's just limited. Their knowledge is limited. It's give us money so we can develop a plan. I mean, that's where it's going to come down to. Give us money and we'll develop a plan, and then we'll come back to you on how we've spent your money. And they'll come back with, it's inconclusive. So why? Because they can continue studying. If they found it and said, hey, we found life. We've got this saucer over here. We've got this group over here. They wouldn't need the dadgum money anymore. So obviously.
Yeah. So in your opinion, this is just complete nonsense.
Yeah,
we shouldn't be giving them
give them more money to stay. Listen, if you're going to go to Mars, stick to your knitting. Go to Mars. If we're going to use you to track Soviet satellites, then let's do that. If we're going to, everything else, I think they just need to stick to their knitting.
Yeah. How about the UAP hearings in Mexico?
You know, our one guy that was down there that was in ours, he went down there and he was legit. And they brought these bodies forth, and I don't know anything about them other than what I've read and what I've heard. If they could get them up, noted ufologists have studied them, noted Mexican doctors. That's Mexican. It's not exactly the place I'd go for any procedures. I wouldn't get a splinter removed south of the border, and bring them up here. Let's take them to one of our research places and let our top research places if they're serious about it. This is the same guy who was rumored to have been involved in a former thing where they had some mummies and they turned out they were just a bunch of, I think it was little Mexican kids that had died. And they put them in it was years ago. There was a situation. He was rumored to have been involved with that situation. I just, bringing forth something like that was just kind of.
This is the same guy that put this on as the same guy that was.
Yeah, allegedly.
What's the point of it then? Why would they have this?
Well, they come out now and said they're the first government to say there's UFOs. I just think. Again, something they got took. I just don't think the Americans went down there with an open mind, and I think they left disgusted with it.
That's what I gathered.
And the people that I know that are in the serious people in this country, they didn't want to say anything because they don't want to, but they've all confided in me that they thought it was pretty much of a hoax.
Just a publicity stunt or something.
Well, and the guy got in there, and he's rich. He'll travel the country. He'll be writing books about it, and he'll display them at the carnival or something. And
yeah,
I'm sure there's money attached to it. There always is.
Do you think that set us back? Do you think it affected the genre at all?
It'd have set us back if I'd have put it in ours. But so they didn't want to come up here.
Yeah.
I mean, we had the most talked about UFO hearing in the world. I mean, bar none.
Yeah.
International. We had people covering it from all over the world. And I was literally having to turn down interviews just because there was just not enough time. Had to be places and blogs and podcasts, or what podcasts I guess you call them. And never heard from these guys once.
Interesting. What do you know about other countries and their, not just Mexico, but
Canada is big involved. Over in Europe's huge. England has they've had departments that have studied this, and people have come forward with information. So it's I think it's and you've got Soviet Union collapses and things. We lose things. You've got the Italians claim that there was a deal, and it's been written about, and I haven't had time to chase it really. Some deal with the Vatican, and that they recovered. They sponsored an archaeological type thing, and they recovered something. Of course, you got the Nazis, of course, in the Second World War. I don't put a lot of faith in that. I think they had a lot of technology going on. They had Werner von Braun and the V2, but they never could perfect a lot of their stuff. They were going 100 different directions, and they didn't learn how to mass produce stuff like you could take a M1 carbine. You could take the slide off of it, one made by Inland Marine, and put it on one made by Winchester. They couldn't do that. The Germans couldn't do that, and we mastered that. Mass production, similar. Something works, stick to it. It's cheap. It works. Produces. Let's go. And they would have, they're intricate and very precise with their things, and that's interesting. That's, oddly enough, that's how they got a lot of their war criminals, because they kept such incredible records of the horrible things they were doing to those poor folks that they hung them. They hung those bastards after the war because they found a lot of information. But I think there's been some pretty well documented cases all over the world.
Yeah, George Knapp reports that Russia has had at least 45 UAP encounters. Former British defense official Nick Pope says that they are aware of UAP programs in both China and Russia. Scott Bray, acting director of Naval Intelligence, reports there are no signs of extraterrestrial involvement. It's just everybody's all over the board here. Do you have any information previous to China and Russia's UAP programs?
A little. Their land mass is so large that they have and they keep things so secret. So when it comes out, it's usually very old, and it's been chewed on so much you don't really know what part of it's the truth or not. So I don't get too hung up on all that stuff.
Okay.
Because there's enough here that you could spend your 5 lifetimes and not ever get it all disseminated. With
as much information and evidence and video footage as you've had access to, is there anything in particular that you find a commonality in all the different reports? Like maybe where do the majority of UAP sightings happen?
Yeah, military installations, but I couch that because obviously military installations are where radar is going to be and where our high-tech stuff's going to be. And are they checking out our craft? Are they checking out these areas, or are they're just prevalent, and we have such high-tech equipment that it picks them up? Because we had pilots tell us how these things had hovered out there for hours, and there'd be like, I think even on one of the audios or one of the tapes, you said, man, there's a squadron of those things out here. And that's not a fake, that's a real deal. I've talked to some of the pilots that were there and that saw that and said that. So I think, I'm not sure that it's just military installations, but I mean, if they're going to fly here and check something out, they're going to see where our best and brightest are, I would assume, and just checking us out. And
I don't know if that's in the military anymore.
Yeah, that's what I said about.
Honest.
They asked me about seeing any UFOs in Washington D.C., and I said no. I said because they said there's no intelligent life down here.
Oh man. All right. Well, let's start moving into the actual hearing.
Right.
Once again, this is the biggest event ever to happen within the subject matter.
Sure.
And you did a phenomenal job putting that together.
Had great people. The other Congress people, Luna, she's great, and Jared Moskowitz. We're not in the same party. When we're so far apart on everything, he's Jewish and I try to be Christian, and he's I'm very conservative and he's not, obviously. He's got an incredible mind, man. God gave him a gift, and I was just honored that he took part in it. And my buddy Matt Gaetz walked in, and somebody said, "Is Gaetz mad at us?" I said, "Gaetz has got his game face on." And man, when his turn came, it rocked.
Yeah.
And he's no slouch. He likes the fight.
Several months ago, my office received a protected disclosure from Eglin Air Force Base indicating that there was a UAP incident that required my attention. I sought a briefing regarding that episode and brought with me Congressman Burchett and Congresswoman Luna. We asked to see any of the evidence that had been taken by flight crew in this endeavor and to observe any radar signature as well as to meet with the flight crew. We were not afforded access to all of the flight crew. And initially, we were not afforded access to images and to radar. Thereafter, we had a bit of a discussion about how authorities flow in the United States of America, and we did see the image. And we did meet with one member of the flight crew who took the image. The image was of something that I am not able to attach to any human capability, either from the United States or from any of our adversaries. And I'm somewhat informed on the matter, having served on the Armed Services Committee for 7 years, having served on the committee that oversees DARPA and advanced technologies for several years. When we spoke with the flight crew, and when he showed us the photo that he'd taken, I asked why the video wasn't engaged, why we didn't have a FLIR system that worked. Here's what he said. They were out on a test mission that day over the Gulf of Mexico. And when you're on a test mission, you're supposed to have clear airspace. Not supposed to be anything that shows up. And they saw a sequence of 4 craft in a clear diamond formation for which there is a radar sequence that I alone have observed in the United States Congress. One of the pilots goes to check out that diamond formation and sees a large floating, what I can only describe as an orb. Again, like I said, not of any human capability that I'm aware of. And when he approached, he said that his radar went down. He said that his FLIR system malfunctioned and that he had to manually take this image from one of the lenses, and it was not automated in collection as you would typically see in a test mission. So I guess I'll start with Commander Fravor. How should we think about the fact that this craft that was approached by our pilot had the capability of disarming a number of the sensor and collection systems on that craft?
Well, I think this goes to that national security side, and you can go back through history of things showing up at certain areas and disabling our capabilities, which is disheartening. And for us, I mean, like I said, it completely disabled the radar on the aircraft when it tried to do it, and the only way we could see it is passively, which is how he got that image. So I think that's a concern on what are these doing, not only how do they operate, but their capabilities inside to do things like this.
And how should we think about 4 craft moving in a very clear formation, equidistant from one another, in a diamond, in all of the phenomenon, perhaps, Mr. Grave, that you've analyzed, have we ever seen multiple craft in a single formation?
I have one particular case, and that was during the gimbal incident. The recording on the AT FLIR system shows a single object that rotates. You hear the pilots refer to a fleet of objects that is not visible on the FLIR system, and that was something that I witnessed during the debrief as part of the radar data on the situational awareness page. I would like to add, however, Congressman, there's a small bit of anger, I would say. I would feel that those pilots are still facing that difficulty in reporting this topic, and they don't have the tools to be able to mitigate this issue. It just goes to show how serious this is and why this is such an important issue for our pilots and for our nation. It was stated explicitly to me by these test pilots that if you have a UAP experience, the best thing you can do for your career is forget it and not tell anyone. Because any type of reporting, either above the surface or below the surface, does have a perceived consequence to these people. And that is a culture we must change if we want to get to the truth. Mr. Chairman, I would observe that perhaps as we move forward from this hearing, there are some obvious next steps. Every person watching this knows that we need to meet with Mr. Grush in a secure, compartmentalized facility so that we can get fulsome answers that do not put him in jeopardy and that give us the information we need. Second, I would suggest that the radar images that were collected of this formation of craft out of Eglin Air Force Base, and specifically the actual image taken by the actual flight crew that we can actually validate, be provided to the committee, subpoenaed if necessary, so that we're able to track how to get this type of reporting and analysis done in a more fulsome way. That would be my recommendation, humbly, as a guest here of the Fine Oversight Committee. I yield back.
I will say it was very refreshing to see two sides come together.
Yeah. Well, I asked AOC. She's a buddy of mine. I call her Cortez. She calls me Burchett. I still don't think she quite gets that I'm not out to get her. It's like I'm going to go up to the Bronx or wherever the heck she's from and beat her, or she's going to come to Knoxville, Tennessee and beat me. I mean, it's kind of, I used to kid Speaker Pelosi. I wish she would cuss me on the 6 o'clock news one time. I said that I could just stand on the corner of Kingston Pike and North Shore with just a bushel basket. And she said, "Why is that?" I said, "Because people be throwing money at me." She thought that was great. And I said, "If you need me to come work against you in San Francisco, just call me." But no, it is a nonpartisan issue, and I think there's a complete distrust of government. It's well earned, and it's both parties do that, and I think we kind of seized upon that.
Let's talk about some of the roadblocks that you guys faced going into this. Right. I know you got turned around at several different military installations.
Yeah, I went down to, was it Eglin, I guess, down in Florida, I think. Mm-hmm. Myself and Luna and Matt Gates. They're both from Florida, so I went down there and ate about 3 dozen raw oysters at some place Matt, his bride, took me to, and then the next morning we went to that meeting, and we're told we're going to be briefed and see pictures and trying to visualize it all in my head because it's still it was so predictable, and meet the pilots. So we go into the skiff, which is James Bond kind of stuff. I don't have a Fitbit, but if you had a Fitbit, you had to take it off. You got a watch or anything electronic or a phone, you had to put it in the little, similar to the things they found the cocaine in at the White House, those kind of compartmentalized things. And so we go in. It's a big room, a lot of brass, a lot of suits, probably CIA or NSA or somebody, I don't know. And and they gave us a great briefing on some really scary stuff that's going on in and around where they are. And
can you elaborate on any of that?
Not really, because of that's what I'm saying. This is a trap. We got to get in the skiff to get this information. Well, in some instances, unless it's been put out, which all this stuff, most of this stuff at Eglin was put out by other people in the room, But if they tell you that stuff, it's secret, and you're not allowed to talk about it unless it's been the press has been out there. But anyway, so and that's a trap. You know, that's what they want to do with David Grush. They want let's get him in the skiff. Let's get this information. Well, it's kind of questionable if they do that. If we can even talk about it, you know. People say, well, it'll help us devise our questions, and I just think it's a trap. So I just take him at his word, and we go on. But anyway, so Matt basically just says, hey, y'all have, it's not what we said we were coming down here for. And he said, yeah, I appreciate all this, but this isn't what we were told we were going to get to talk to pilots. We were going to see pictures. We were going to get to interview the pilots on what they saw. And they said, you can't do it. You don't have the, credentials or whatever. You don't have clearance to do
You don't
that.
have the clearance level.
Yeah. And, which is not true. So technically we're supposed to have the clearance. And Matt said, I tell you what we're going to do. It was like, he said, we're going to come in here. We're going to have a hearing in D.C. and we're going to ask you some questions. And I'm paraphrasing what Matt said, but he said, y'all are going to perjure yourself on something you've said, and we're going to hold you accountable. And said, now, which is it? And they said, well, we're not. And I said, all right. He said, I'm calling Washington. I'm going to talk to somebody in Washington. So whoever at the Pentagon, Matt, and the general brought us a nice fruit tray, I remember, up there. And the room was bugged, by the way. That was a funny thing. The room was, they had these mics connected and all this other stuff. And it was just, it's typical BS. And so while I was enjoying a delicious fruit tray at government expense, Matt was talking to the Pentagon. And about an hour later, the general came in, and there's one of his people, I can't remember which, said, all right, we're bringing them in. And so we go back down, and they talked. They talked about, and Matt described it in the hearing about some things. And I always took this from us, that what Matt said in the hearing. He said these were craft that were none of our enemies or our adversaries or friends had, and nobody in this world had this type of aircraft. Is that correct? And they all said, nope, nobody's got those.
Unanimously, without hesitation? Without hesitation.
Just went down the line. And I'm not sure if he asked that anyway, but that led up to all that, which I thought was I don't know if magnificent's the right word, but it was, you don't ask a question unless you know the answer. And it was historic, I guess, because it's funny, the wheels in Washington, leadership, both parties, they just, I let Burchett go ahead and do this thing, and nobody will show up. They had like 1,000. They said they had more people there than they've ever had at anything. I walked down the hall, and they were lined up around. People saw me and started clapping and getting selfies and stuff. I got up at I left the office at 4:30 that morning to go be on Fox to talk about the hearing coming up. People were already lined up, dude, outside the building at 4:30 in the morning. I met people from overseas that had flown in on their own dime. I remember that's what some kid came from Alaska. He said, I'm flown here on my own dime. I said, well, get in line, brother. And the hearing was, I don't know, 3 hours maybe, 2.5 hours. People never left. And they had, what you didn't see was they had a whole nother viewing room packed with people were watching it.
Yeah.
And so, people of all, white folks, black folks, different faiths, had a priest in there of all things who came to watch it. And a reporter told me they'd been there 15 years and said, Tim, and he named all these hearings that went on. He said, they've never had this much interest.
Man.
And that's what caught leadership off guard, I think.
Did that surprise you?
No, it did not. I thought they'd try to turn a lot of them away.
You knew how much interest this subject carries.
And we tried to have it's funny, we had a press conference. My press secretary, Rachel, said, boss, we're going to do this press event. And I said, okay, whatever. And I didn't really think much of it. I just said, we're going to sit there and answer a few questions. And I was getting ready to walk into our conference meeting. It was caucus when I was in the state legislature. It's conference now. And I'm sorry I look off a lot. I'm trying to visualize because I can visualize it in my head what we were doing. I remember I was walking down the hall and a reporter set their microphone, handed it to the camera and said, hey, Tim, can I talk to you for a minute? And this was a reporter from a major network. I said, yeah, brother, what's up? Man, I thought maybe he's in trouble. I don't know. And he said, hey, you got this press conference called tomorrow, right? And I said, yeah. And he said, they put you in a room that's under construction. I said, this is a big event. You can't get in there. There won't be enough room for y'all to even hardly be in there. And I was like, really? And so we did some checking. In fact, every step of the way, they tried to block us. And that always just inspired me to push a little harder because even the press knew that there's something going on with this thing. And they got all this other stuff to cover, Hunter Biden and the president and all those shenanigans and cocaine at the White House and the border and fentanyl and all these incredibly important things. But every reporter pretty much was on top of that thing.
Yeah. What other kind of pushback did you get?
We had pushback from our own Republican staff, trying to discredit members. I was mistaken, but I was told I was going to chair this meeting.
Yeah.
And the day before, I was told, no, in fact, you're not going to chair this meeting.
Who makes that decision?
Well, it comes from on high. It's got to go through the speaker to the chairman or whatever, But it was fine. The guy that chaired it did a good job, and I don't think he realized, how big it was going to be.
Yeah.
Have the tiger by the tail on that one.
Was that McCarthy's decision?
I don't know. I guess. It could have been the chairman, or could have been I just misunderstood. But if you saw any interview leading up to that, it said Tim Burchett will be chairing this. Luna, she said I was going to chair it. Gates said I was going to chair it. Moskowitz said I was going to chair it. Everybody said I was going to chair it, and then I was told. But, again, they asked, I got out there, I tweeted, I said, I've just been informed, and I dropped it at that because I didn't want the issue to be me or what was going on. I wanted it to be what was in that thing because that could have easily blown up into, we just walked off, and then they would have been sitting there talking about Chinese spy balloons the whole time, which is what a lot of them wanted it to be about.
That's what a couple of them brought up.
They did.
Well,
they folks like that are tied to leadership, and that's fine.
I thought something funny was going on when they pulled you off that. In fact, I asked you, why'd you get pulled off? But
we touched a nerve. We tried to do the select committee and intelligence. Another instance, one other thing before I forget, and I'm sorry to pull you off of your thought, but the TAA reauthorization, transportation reauthorization bill, I had an amendment on that just said if a commercial pilot, not a armed forces, a commercial pilot spots a UFO or UAP, that when they make that report, that it has to be made to Congress as well. The amendment was not even allowed to be heard. The whip came to me on the House floor and said the intelligence community, not the intelligence committee, but the intelligence community had some problems with that. A bunch of unelected bureaucrats. Once again, you wonder how they can still fund Ukraine while the rest of the country goes without. Unelected bureaucrats, once again. And it wasn't even heard in committee. And to me, that's unacceptable.
Yeah, that's disturbing. Where do you think that the motivation comes from, especially from people in your own party trying to discredit you or whoever's decision it was to pull you off chair in that hearing, where's the motivation coming from?
Got too much attention. We're turning over too many stones. Too many people were getting uncomfortable.
So are these people being paid?
I don't know. I don't know what they're doing. Honestly, I mean, it's the swamp. I mean, it's the crookedest thing I've ever been around in my life. But I mean, it's everybody says, what's your biggest surprise when you got to Washington? That I was not surprised, because it's, it's just human nature, and they play upon it. People want to be liked. They want to be popular. They want to have money. They want power.
I think it may be coming from the reverse engineering, supposedly reverse engineering projects, and maybe some of these military industrial complex companies may be paying people off to try to discredit you.
Well, I mean, they can take them to dinner one night and then say, hey, we got this little condo down here at the beach. Why don't you bring your girlfriend or boyfriend or both down to the beach or something? And, they get their tentacles into them, their claws into them, and then they just own them. And it's just they develop a relationship, and everybody wants to be liked. And I get it. I'm not angry at anybody. I'm not even disappointed. I'm not even surprised. It's just what I deal with on a daily basis, just about on any issue.
It's the way it is up there.
That's what needs to change.
Well, let's unpack the actual hearing now.
Okay.
So I'd just like to go through each guy's testimony, even though it was all kind of intermixed. But let's start out with the pilots. David Fravor.
Commander Fravor.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Congressmen, Congresswomen. I want to first thank you for the invitation to speak to the committee on the UAP topic that has been in the news for the past 6 years and seems to be continuing to gain momentum. As you know, my name is David Fravor. I'm a retired commander in the United States Navy. In 2004, I was a commanding officer of Strike Fighter Squadron 41, the world-famous Black Aces. We were attached to Carrier Wing 11, stationed on board the USS Nimitz, and had begun a 2-month workup cycle off the coast of California. On this day, we were scheduled for a 2v2 air-to-air training with the USS Princeton as our control. When we launched off Nimitz, my wingman was joining up. We were told that the training was going to be suspended and we were going to proceed with real-world tasking. As we proceeded to the west, the air controller was counting down the range to an object that we were going to, and we were unaware of what we were going to see when we arrived. The controller had told us that these objects had been observed for over 2 weeks, coming down from over 80,000 feet, rapidly descending to 20,000 feet, hanging out for hours, and then going straight back up. For those who don't realize, above 80,000 feet is space. We arrived at the location at approximately 20,000 feet, and the controller called merge plot, which means that our radar blip was now in the same resolution cell as the contact. As we looked around, we noticed that we saw some whitewater off our right side. It's important to note that the weather on this day was as close to perfect as you could ask for off the coast of San Diego. Clear skies, light winds, calm seas, no whitecaps from waves. So the whitewater stood out in a large blue ocean. All four of us, because we were in F-18Fs, so we had pilots and Wizzo in the back seat, looked down and saw a white tic-tac object with a longitudinal axis pointing north-south and moving very abruptly over the water like a ping-pong ball. There were no rotors, no rotor wash, or any sign of visible control surfaces like wings. As we started clockwise towards the object, my Wizzo and I decided to go down and take a closer look with the other aircraft staying in high cover to observe both us and the tic-tac. We proceeded around the circle about 90 degrees from the start of our descent, and the object suddenly shifted its longitudinal axis, aligned it with my aircraft, and began to climb. We continued down another 270 degrees, nose low, where the tic-tac, or we considered 270 degrees to where, and we went nose low to where the tic-tac would have been. Our altitude at this point was about 15,000 feet, and the tic-tac was about 12,000. As we pulled nose onto the object, within about a half mile of it, it rapidly accelerated in front of us and disappeared. Our wingman, roughly 8,000 feet above us, lost contact also. We immediately turned back to see where the whitewater was at, and it was gone also. So as we started to turn back towards the east, the controller came up and said, "Sir, you're not going to believe this, but that thing is at your cat point, roughly 60 miles away in less than a minute. You can calculate the speed." We returned to Nimitz. We were taking off our gear. We were talking to one of my crews that was getting ready to launch. We mentioned it to him. And they went out and luckily got the video that you see, that 90-second video. What you don't see is the radar tape that was never released, and we don't know where it's at, of the active jamming that the object put on an APG-73 radar. And I can get into modes later if you're interested. What is shocking to us is that the incident was never investigated. None of my crew were ever questioned. Tapes were never taken. And after a couple days, it turned into a great story with friends. It wasn't until 2009 till Jay Stratton had contacted me to investigate. Unbeknownst to all, he was part of the ATIP program in the Pentagon led by Lou Elizondo. There was an unofficial official report that came out that's now on the internet. Years later, I was contacted by the other pilot, Alex Dietrich, and asked if I'd been contacted, and I said no, but I'm willing to talk. I was contacted by Mr. Elizondo, and we talked for a short period of time, and he said we'd be in contact. A few weeks after that, I was made aware that Lou had left the Pentagon in protest and joined forces with Tom DeLonge, Chris Mellon, Steve Justice, and others to form Two Stars Academy, an organization that pressed the issue with leading industry experts and U.S. government officials. They worked with Leslie Keane, who is present today, Ralph Blumenthal, and Helene Cooper to publish the articles in the New York Times 2017 New York Times. And it removed the stigma on the topic of UFOs, which is why we're here today. Those articles open the door for the government and public that cannot be closed. It has led to an interest from our elected officials who are not focused on little green men, but figuring out where these craft are, where are they from, the technology they possess, how do they operate. It also led to the Whistleblower Protection Act and the NDAA. There are multiple witnesses coming forward to say that have firsthand knowledge, and Mr. Grush just covered that. What concerns me is that there's no oversight from our elected officials on anything associated with our government processing or working on craft. Believe not from this world. This issue is not a full public disclosure that could undermine national security, but it is about ensuring that our system of checks and balances works across all work done in the government using taxpayer funds. Relative to government programs, even unacknowledged WAVE programs have some level of oversight by the appropriate committee members in the House and Senate. And this work that is said to be occurring from whistleblower testimonies should not be exempt. In closing, I would like to say that the Tic Tac object we engaged in 2004 was far superior to anything that we had on time, have today, or are looking to develop in the next 10 years. If we in fact have programs that possess this technology, it needs to have oversight from those people that the citizens of this great country elected in office to represent what is best for the United States and best for the citizens. I thank you for your time. Thank you very much.
His concern was that there was going to be a collision, and his concern was literally with the pilots, that they have some safety and security, because the government's saying this isn't happening and this is not going on. I mean, it was just a genuine concern, and he's been brought into it because of what he'd seen.
What did he see? Can you go through his testimony?
Well, so you're asking me to remember too much. I was up on stage moving around pretty quick. Let's see. I can throw it all together. Seems one of them, they were hovering, and they went out to them, and then they'd seen them multiple times. Then they chased them, and then, they both were pretty similar as far as that went down. I mean, I knew their testimony before they gave it. I mean, obviously, because I had, I'd researched them pretty well. And all I wanted them to do was to get up there and just tell what they saw, and and show that they had nothing to gain from it, and maybe give them a little credibility, because I'm sure they'd taken some abuse over it.
Yeah. When I first started this whole podcasting thing, an online store was about as far from my mind as you can get. And now, most of you already know this, but I'm selling Vigilance Elite gummy bears online. We actually have an entire merch collection that's coming soon. And let me tell you, it is so easy because I'm using a platform that is extremely user-friendly, and that's Shopify. Shopify is the global commerce platform that helps you sell at every stage of your business. What I really like about Shopify is it prompts you all the things that you want to do with your web store, like connect your social media accounts, write blog posts, just have a blog in general. Shopify actually prompts you to do this. You want people to leave reviews under your items? You can do that on Shopify. It's very simple. Shopify helps you turn browsers into buyers with the internet's best converting checkout, 36% better on average compared to the other leading commerce platforms. Shopify is a global force for millions of entrepreneurs in over 175 countries and power 10% of all e-commerce platforms here in the United States. You can sign up right now for $1 a month. It's shopify.com/Sean. That's all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/Sean now to grow your business no matter what stage you're in. That's shopify.com/Sean. Right now, I just want to give a huge shout out to all of you out there whose job it is to hire. From small business owners who are just trying to grow their team to the HR rep of a big firm who's hiring hundreds throughout the year. You all have one of the toughest jobs there is. But what if I were to tell you there is an easier way to hire? It's called ZipRecruiter. And right now you can try it for free by going to ZipRecruiter.com/SRS. Instead of you doing all the hiring work, getting everything together, packaging it up, putting it on every single social media app, your email list, everything, you just go to ZipRecruiter and it works for you. Once you post your job on ZipRecruiter, basically it sends it to 100+ different job sites so that you reach more of the right people. ZipRecruiter's powerful technology scans thousands of resumes for you to identify people whose skills and experience match your job. If you're hiring, let ZipRecruiter make your job easier. 4 out of 5 employers who post on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate within the first day. See for yourself. Go to this exclusive web address to try ZipRecruiter for free. ZipRecruiter.com/SRS. Again, that's ZipRecruiter.com/SRS. ZipRecruiter, the smartest way to hire.
And, you know, and the Tic Tac videos, of course, because they're shaped like the candy, was the interesting thing to me is that it didn't show a heat trail. It went underwater. They followed them. They chased them. I'd say they chased them. They weren't really. They had the capabilities of just smoking them if they needed. I mean, they couldn't keep up with them. They went underwater at one point, and they didn't lose any speed at all.
They went underwater.
Yeah, they followed them. And they went underwater, and then they came back out. And if you just follow their natural trajectory, big word for me, but if you follow the movement, they went, and then when they just came back up. It just didn't even phase them.
Could they see them underwater?
At one point, and one of the things they could, but they were using, I forget which kind of infrared they were using to follow them. It wasn't infrared because it didn't show a heat signature. It was, well, I forget the terminology, but it was, you know, I'd watched those videos 100 times before because every time I'm on TV, they always show them. And, you know, and they keep saying they don't exist. The government says they don't exist, and yet they do. And I'm pretty sure one of the people we mentioned in the earlier segment might have had something to do with getting those out to the public. And so...
well, I would love to talk to that individual.
Well, I'll work on that.
If you would make that connections kindly, please.
I will try to make that connection. But, you know, again, what I said in my opening statement was, we're not going to bring little green men in here. We're not going to bring a flying saucer. All we're going to do is bring people out that have nothing to gain, basically, to get this stuff out there to the American public. Because they've been told so long this isn't happening, it's not real. And these guys are going to tell you it's happened. And all 3 of them pretty much did. You know, yeah. It was almost surreal, really, because I kept, you know, my whole life, I watch those TV shows, and makes me angry that they keep saying the government has this stuff or these people, and they won't allow them to speak. And then I got in a position where I could put it out there. It was a little pretty satisfying for me, just that we pulled it off. Yeah. And you know, as they were talking, a lot of the times they were talking, the camera would be on them. I could talk to members of both sides of the aisle and encourage them in their questioning of where they were going with this stuff. And so it worked really well for all of us, I think. The whole committee really worked well.
Yeah. Let's move into Brian Graves' testimony.
Okay.
And what he wanted. So Brian Graves, also a naval pilot, firsthand account, saw UAP. Do you remember his testimony specifically?
Yeah. Interesting thing about his was he saw it, compartmentalized it, never talked about it.
I'll now recognize Mr. Graves for 5 minutes for your opening statement.
Thank you. Chairman Grothman, Ranking Member Garcia, distinguished members of the House Oversight Subcommittee on National Security, Representatives Burchett and Luna. My name is Ryan Fobbs Graves, and I'm a former F-18 pilot with a decade of service in the U.S. Navy, including 2 deployments in Operation Enduring Freedom and Operation Inherent Resolve. I have experienced advanced UAP firsthand, and I'm here to voice the concerns of more than 30 commercial aircrew and military veterans who have confided their similar encounters with me. Today, I would like to highlight 3 critical issues that demand our action. As we convene here, UAP are in our airspace, but they are grossly underreported. These sightings are not rare or isolated, they are routine. Military aircrew and commercial pilots, trained observers whose lives depend on accurate identification, are frequently witnessing these phenomena. The stigma attached to UAP is real and powerful and challenges national security. It silences commercial pilots who fear professional repercussions, discourages witnesses, and is only compounded by recent government claims questioning the credibility of eyewitness testimony. Parts of our government are aware of more about UAP than they let on, but excessive classification practices keep crucial information hidden. Since 2021, all UAP videos are classified as secret or above. This level of secrecy not only impedes our understanding, but fuels speculation and mistrust. In 2014, I was an F-18 Foxtrot pilot in the Navy Fighter Attack Squadron 11, the Red Rippers. And I was stationed at NAS Oceana in Virginia Beach. After upgrades were made to our jet's radar systems, we began detecting unknown objects operating in our airspace. At first, we assumed they were radar errors, but soon we began to correlate the radar tracks with multiple onboard sensors, including infrared systems, eventually through visual ID. During a training mission in Warning Area Whiskey 72, 10 miles off the coast of Virginia Beach, 2 F-18 Super Hornets were split by a UAP. The object, described as a dark gray or a black cube inside of a clear sphere, came within 50 feet of the lead aircraft and was estimated to be 5 to 15 feet in diameter. The mission commander terminated the flight immediately and returned to base. Our squadron submitted a safety report, but there was no official acknowledgement of the incident and no further mechanism to report the sightings. Soon, these encounters became so frequent that aircrew would discuss the risk of UAP as part of their regular pre-flight briefs. Recognizing the need for action and answers, I founded Americans for Safe Aerospace. The organization has since become a haven for UAP witnesses who were previously unspoken due to the absence of a safe intake process. More than 30 witnesses have come forward, and almost 5,000 Americans have joined us in the fight for transparency at safeaerospace.org. The majority of witnesses are commercial pilots at major airlines. Often, they are veterans with decades of flying experience. Pilots are reporting UAP at altitudes that appear above them at 40,000 feet, potentially in low Earth orbit or in the gray zone below the Kármán line, making inexplainable maneuvers like right-hand turns and retrograde orbits or J-hooks. Sometimes these reports are reoccurring, with numerous recent sightings north of Hawaii and in the North Atlantic. Other veterans are also coming forward to us regarding UAP encounters in our airspace and oceans. The most compelling involve observations of UAP by multiple witnesses and sensor systems. I believe these accounts are only scratching the surface, and more will share their experiences once it is safe to do so. In closing, I recognize the skepticism surrounding this topic. If everyone could see the sensor and video data I witnessed, our national conversation would change. I urge us to put aside stigma and address the security and safety issue this topic represents. If UAP are foreign drones, it is an urgent national security problem. If it is something else, it is an issue for science. In either case, unidentified objects are concerned for flight safety. The American people deserve to know what is happening in our skies. It is long overdue. Thank you.
It was leaked. They said it did not exist. Then it came out, and they said it's a fake. Then I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, but he had his audio. They heard him talking, and they figured out who it was, and they went to him and said, "Yeah, that's me."
No kidding. That's how they found out.
I think it was sort of in that line from what I understand. It might get changed around a little bit, but what I understand, that's pretty much it.
So he had never intended to actually come out. He was going to just let this die.
Yeah, I mean, it was part of his duty, and he did his duty and went on about his business. Rest of it, I mean, that happened years ago. He's not, I don't believe he's even in the force anymore. Mm-mm. And he, but they talked about how they were hovering and how they took off, and at the speed he took, it was just, we did the math, and it was just it would turn you and me into a blob.
Yeah, I believe that was one of the questions was, could a human body even
wiststand it?
Withstand these G's, the G-force.
But it wasn't a gradual increase either. It was just, whoosh, it was gone. And he, very compelling. Again, why would he come back to endure any criticism over this thing when he's just doing his duty? And those are the guys, though, that, they get interrogated and after it's over with, and they get a blemish on their record. And I wish that and that's too, if we were to come out and just admit that this thing's going on, as we've covered it up, and here's some proof we've got of it, they'd be clear. They'd be clear.
Yeah, I think it was Ryan that was, his thing was blowback on pilots for coming out, correct?
Yeah.
How many of these pilots are getting, I mean, it sounds like this really affects these guys' career if they come out and say,
I think it really does.
I saw something.
I think it really does. I heard one of them say one time that they came back and everybody was, they'd gotten some aluminum foil and made like a flying saucer. And when he landed on the aircraft carrier, they were, and they were dressed, guys were walking around with antennas on their heads and stuff, just making fun of him. And they were just making fun of him. But at some point, you're like, what the heck? This is going on. This is real. I saw what I saw, and these people don't believe it for whatever reason.
Do you remember both of them talking about the propulsion systems and how there was no sound, no?
Yeah, no, and I don't know if they said, but I've been briefed or talked about before the heat signature is what they called it. It just didn't show it. It just defies everything we know that we know currently, and just the amount of power that it took was just beyond belief.
Let's move into David Grush. His testimony, I mean, it just had, there was so many different aspects of the things that he had been involved in. It was kind of ironic that, if I remember correctly, he never actually saw anything with his own two eyes. It was all things that had happened on the program that he was a part of, correct?
Secondhand, yeah. Was told about, and that he debriefed people on, I believe, and along that line, yeah.
But to me, personally, it was the most, I can't really say in depth because it was so vague. It was, I got to tell you about this in a skiff. I got to tell you about that in a skiff. I can't answer this question unless it's in a skiff. But I guess I'll just say this. It was the one that caught my attention the most.
This is an important issue, and I'm grateful for your time. My name is David Charles Grush. I was an intelligence officer for 14 years, both in the U.S. Air Force, both active duty, Air National Guard, and Reserve, at the rank of major, and most recently from 2021 to 2023, at the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency, NGA, at the GS-15 civilian level, which is the military equivalent of a full bird colonel. I was my agency's co-lead in unidentified anomalous phenomena and transmedium object analysis, as well as reporting to the UAP task force, UAPTF, and eventually, once it was established, the All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, ARROW. I became a whistleblower through a PPD-19 urgent concern filing in May 2022 with the Intelligence Community Inspector General. Following concerning reports from multiple esteemed and credentialed current and former military and intelligence community individuals that the U.S. government is operating with secrecy above congressional oversight with regards to UAPs. My testimony is based on information I've been given by individuals with a long-standing track record of legitimacy and service to this country, many of whom also have shared compelling evidence in the form of photography, official documentation, and classified oral testimony to myself and my various colleagues. I have taken every step I can to corroborate this evidence over a period of 4 years while I was with the UAP task force and do my due diligence on the individual sharing it. This is because of these steps, I believe strongly in the importance of bringing this information before you. I am driven by a commitment of both to truth and transparency, rooted in our inherent duty to uphold the United States Constitution and protect the American people. I'm asking Congress to hold our government to this standard and thoroughly investigate these claims. But as I stand here under oath now, I am speaking to the facts as I've been told them. In the U.S. Air Force, in my National Reconnaissance Office, NRO, reservist capacity, I was a member of the UAP task force from 2019 to 2021. I served at the NRO Operations Center on the Director's briefing staff, which included the coordination of the Presidential Daily Brief and supporting variety of contingency operations, which I was the Reserve Intelligence Division Chief backup. In 2019, the UAP Task Force Director asked me to identify all special access programs and controlled access programs, also known as SAPs and CAPs, we needed to satisfy our congressionally mandated mission, and we were direct report at the time to the DepSecDef. At the time, due to my extensive executive level intelligence support duties, I was cleared to literally all relevant compartments and in a position of extreme trust, both in my military and civilian capacities. I was informed in the course of my official duties of a multi-decade UAP crash retrieval and reverse engineering program, to which I was denied access to those additional read-ons when I requested it. I made the decision, based on the data I collected, to report this information to my superiors and multiple inspectors general, and in effect becoming a whistleblower. As you know, I've suffered retaliation for my decision, but I am hopeful that my actions will ultimately lead to a positive outcome of increased transparency. Thank you, and I'm happy to answer your questions.
I'd say it caught the country's attention the most, and I said if you discredit him, if everything comes out and says he's a liar, we still got these two pilots, and I just think that they, I know Grush, known him for some time. We talk, we text frequently or whatever, and he's a very interesting guy. He's put into a tough situation, and again, why would you come out with all that? Because you know he's going to get humiliated publicly.
Yeah. Could you go through some of the stuff that he disclosed?
Yeah. Bodies. There are bodies. There are craft. There are, and that went along with my line of questioning. My questions were kind of leading because I knew the answer, but I wanted them to say it, that they, we know this stuff's out there. Somebody has it, and how they keep it from us. Because the next thing would be, well, why didn't somebody come out with it then? Because the people that have it, that are looking at it probably right now, don't know what the heck they're looking at. Mm-hmm. And
he was talking about reverse engineering crafts.
That's right.
So where is he saying these crafts came from? Where did we recover them?
Some are archaeological now I could be putting conversations that I've had versus the committee, because you got to realize I've been.
Yep. You don't know.
I've been in so much of these meetings, and people call me, and then I get information and talk to these guys or text them or whatever. But some of them are archaeological in digs that people have found. Some of them are craft that have crashed recently that have just been covered up. But there's kind of a cutoff, I think, because of the technology. And that leads me back to that electro whatever radio that we think maybe caused them some difficulty and that caused some of these crashes, and that our technology has moved past that now. So you're probably not seeing those type of crafts those crashes happening, if they are happening at all, because we've moved past the technology that we were using in the 40s and 50s and 60s and maybe in the 70s. But it's not transistors anymore, obviously.
So it was previous technology that was causing these things to crash. What technology?
It was a radio technology, some kind of radio technology we were using, and maybe in some of our radars and things like that we no longer use. And I apologize, I can't even remember the name of it. I should have read up on it again. But it was I was told that by somebody pretty informed that thought that was probably the reason that all of a sudden that it started, and then all of a sudden it sort of stopped, because after we quit using that kind of technology, it quit. It apparently would not. And I don't know if shorten it out is the right thing, because I don't know what they're using.
Yeah.
But apparently is what it did was it would lock them up, kind of.
Maybe offline, did he ever talk about how long it may have taken to reverse engineer some of these crafts?
Offline, like me and you talk offline, or offline? Did I talk offline with them?
Offline with them.
Oh, yeah. They said a lot of it we're still not even in the ballpark. We're hardly scratching the surface. Again, it goes back to taking my Harley Davidson back to the people on the Mayflower.
Yeah.
Kind of thing. And we're the people on the Mayflower.
Yeah.
Because this technology is so advanced, so far past us that it's just hard for us to comprehend.
How about, he had also talked about recovering non-human biologics.
Yeah, bodies is what and of course, if the craft got here, somebody had to fly them at some point. How they do that, I don't know.
If you believe we have crashed craft, stated earlier, do we have the bodies of the pilots who piloted this craft?
As I've stated publicly already in my News Nation interview, biologics came with some of these recoveries, yeah.
Were they, I guess, human or non-human biologics?
Non-human, and that was the assessment of people with direct knowledge on the program I talked to that are currently still on the program.
And was this documentary evidence, this video, photos, eyewitness? Like, how would that be determined?
The specific documentation I would have to talk to you in a skiff about.
I mean, not necessarily. We're doing drones.
Yeah, we're doing drones.
Like
that's correct. That's
drones.
correct. And maybe that's why some of them do, some of them don't. But I would think at some point we would, some kind of, you look at the hieroglyphics and things, and some people have mentioned that there is, that there would, well, I know one of them told me, that I referred to earlier, told me that there was like, they wouldn't call it portholes, but it was obviously something, a viewing type situation. Where
what do you mean by that?
They could see out of it, the craft. That was in the, maybe the Mediterranean, I believe where they were at the time in the Navy. And when the craft slowed down over them, that they could see, before it got to them, or when it's pulling out or whatever, they could see that there was obviously some kind of viewing apparatus in it. So, but yeah, I don't know. I don't get too hung up on all that. I just, like I said, my thing is that they continue to hide this. How can we trust the government that said they didn't exist? And then all of a sudden they say they do exist, and we're supposed to fund them to study it. I just think they'll trickle stuff out and keep that hook out there, and we'll just keep biting it.
Yeah.
Because that's human nature, and it's going to. But they know they got to.
I mean, when is the first time that you heard that we've recovered non-human biologics? Well, it obviously wasn't in the hearing.
Yeah. I don't know, a couple years ago.
What was your reaction?
Not surprised. I mean, I'm not surprised at anything anymore, man. Every time I just go back to my statement about every night I will tonight. I'll go out and look at those stars every night. The light from that left before the time of Christ. I mean, that's incredible. That's over 2,000 years ago, dude. That light left that. And some of these stars we're seeing have imploded.
They're already gone.
They're already gone, and we're seeing the light from them just now.
We're looking back in time.
Right.
It's fascinating stuff.
It's too much to me. I can't really, in my little West Knoxville mind, it's too much for me to comprehend.
Yeah.
And that's why I don't get too caught up in all of it. I don't really pick the sides on this thing.
Yeah.
And it's hard for me to recall specifics, a lot of the specifics in it, because honestly, I was so tired and so worn out when that committee finally rolled around, because we were just every roadblock. I mean, it was just weary almost, and they just wore us down. And that was part of the intention. I think they thought we'd throw in the towel, but we didn't. And it just got bigger and bigger. And by the end of that, I was running on fumes pretty much when the committee rolled around. I was just glad everybody got their questions asked and we got it documented.
What was the most compelling portion of all three of these testimonies for you personally? What stuck out the most?
I don't know, because honestly, I've been reading about this and studying this since I was 7 or 8 years old, and I've talked about it, and I've talked to people so much. I think the best part about it was just what I said in the final part of it. I just said, Mr. Chairman, if I can say something. He said, yeah, sure. I said, I hope this allows you folks that have took ridicule your whole life over this thing to finally say, yes, somebody else believes what you're saying, and that you don't, you're not some pariah or something. You're not crazy.
Yeah.
That you've seen something, and we're going to try to get to the bottom of it. I don't know if I will or not. I think, they're going to keep throwing up roadblocks and giving me one more committee. Amazing. We got to take time in government to make government bring out stuff that they have.
Yeah.
And they still won't do it.
Yeah, it is
very frustrating. And that's Americans want their pizzas in 30 minutes or less, and that's about our dadgum attention span, and I'm 100% guilty of that.
Yeah.
They run out the clock on this thing. There'll be another shiny object over here we'll be chasing and move on to something else, they think. I'm going to keep pushing at it. I don't know how much longer I can keep Congress involved in it.
Yeah, well, I think we're seeing that in just about every issue that gets brought up is we're just kicking the can down the road, And
it goes away. It's a great,
it does.
It's a great deal for them because, people in the swamp, because they know they can just move on to the next one.
Yeah. It does work. I mean, saw with the Afghan withdrawal recently.
Nobody's talking about that anymore.
We saw with all kinds of stuff that's happening.
And nobody's talking about the cocaine at the White House. Nobody's talking about all these other things. But, there's still, every day I'm getting a call on UFOs.
Yeah, nobody's talking about the Epstein stuff.
Who? Yeah, absolutely. And that's the biggest cover-up of, I mean, they spend a whole lot of time trashing, the movie about that, about the kids being abducted and stuff. And it doesn't exist. It doesn't happen. And every day there's somebody's breaking a new ring. Well, I don't care if it's, coming from on high or some trailer park somewhere. I
they're definitely hiding something. They pulled my interview with Jim Caviezel down. I just woke up one morning, it was gone.
I do not doubt that.
And he was the main actor in that movie. But, back to Graves, there was one of the big subject matters in the hearing was government intimidation, blowback from coming out, and then almost right after that, they leaked that Grush had PTSD medical information in his record to try to discredit him.
And that was, I was told, straight from the intelligence community. They held on to that, and they leaked it to this. I mean, it wasn't even a mainline reporter. I don't think anybody else would touch it.
Yeah.
And he got the scoop, and that's what reporters do. But it was, they were holding on to that one.
Yeah. Well, what happened after that hearing? A lot of what Grush had to say was, I want to talk to you in a skiff. Did you guys ever get the skiff? Did you ever get the...
Never did.
You never got the skiff? What's holding that up?
Well, I suspect somebody's got somebody's ear in leadership. And the Intelligence Committee / community, they didn't like what we did. They didn't like us.
Is that the committee in Congress or the Senate?
Well, there's one in both, but the Intelligence Committee in the House didn't want it. And, there's all these rivalries. It just happens. I mean, it's just human nature, dude. I don't, they're all my friends, but, we touched a nerve. We really did. And I feel like some people, they said this stuff doesn't exist and they made fun of it. And then leading all three stations, I mean, ABC, NBC, CBS, CNN, Fox, you name it. Newsmax, OAN. I mean, they just pounded it, and their ratings have gone through the roof. And I knew that that somebody was reading the polling data when Fox started calling, because it was just everywhere.
Yeah.
And I'd go to a high school football game or something, and it's all anybody wanted to talk about. Church parking lot. It's all they wanted to talk about. It was, and I guess looking back, it's almost surreal, really, because it was pure, man. It was pretty cool.
Do you think a lot of these people that have commented to you under the table on good job, thanks for covering this, you think they saw the notoriety? You think they saw
some of them
the
did
news and they just want more press
and that's
time?
why they want to bump me. They don't. That's why we're not, probably part of the reason we're not getting a select committee. And that's just part of the game.
Do you talk to the Senate committee at all?
Oddly enough, all those UFO people in the Senate that talk UFOs, a couple of them I've tried to have meetings with, and they've canceled the meetings.
Really?
Yeah, before all this even happened. And, we'll meet with you.
Interesting.
And then they cancel it, and they never reschedule.
I've been trying like hell to get Marco Rubio in here to talk about it.
Ask him why he canceled the meeting with me.
I will. If I get him in here, I'll ask him that. But
he'll probably say who.
Yeah.
But
where do you?
The staffers, they got too much control, and they're running the show.
Yeah. What's coming next in Congress?
With this issue?
Yeah, with this issue.
Yeah, we'll have another committee, and what I'd like to bring in is some department people. I don't want to discuss too much about it because they'll end run me again. But we've got some pretty informed people that want to come in and talk about what's going on in their departments or what went on when they were there, and maybe hopefully issue some subpoenas. You get some real information. This putting it in the skiff, it's just, it's too edgy. It has to be leaked, out by the press, and then you can talk about it allegedly. I don't know. It's just ridiculous. And
too much red tape.
Do what?
Too much red tape.
Well, it's that way on purpose.
Yeah.
Keeps the powerful in power, and they're the ones who make the rules. And how do you get to that much power? You got to be there for a while. You got to sell your soul.
Yeah. Do you know when the next hearing is going to be?
Not yet. We'd like to have it pretty soon, though. I'd like to have it before the end of the year.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, I'd love to get out there for it.
When I get a date, we'll get it to you.
All right.
You'll be like first on my call list, as far as you know.
Thank you. Thank you. But,
you'll be sitting there with a bunch of people and go, yeah, Tim Burchett said he's going to call me first. He called me first. And you go, what?
I'll jockey for my seat right behind the table.
Yeah,
but
we'll get that worked out.
All right, one more subject before we wrap this up. 0 point energy.
Right.
I love talking about this subject. What's your opinion on it?
I think it's reality. I just don't think we've got it. We got that genie in the bottle just yet, or if we do, they're not putting it out because it would put them all out of business. And we wouldn't have these wars. Imagine all that energy we spend on energy. I mean, not like energy as in, nuclear or anything like that. All that energy, brain width, we spend on all this stuff and all these wars and all these people that die. We wouldn't need it. We wouldn't need it. Imagine if this world just united behind something. I don't think they ever will, but if it limited what we would be fighting for.
Let me backtrack just real quick for the audience. So 0 point energy is basically technology that enables energy to be free. That means no more utilities, no more fossil fuels, no more any of that stuff. Everything is just powered by energy that is free. And supposedly Nikola Tesla figured this out a long time ago.
Yeah.
And
look what happened to him.
Yep. They confiscated all of his research.
Died alone in a motel room. Broken.
Guy that invented the hydrocar, mysteriously dead.
Yep. In a knife fight, like at his farm.
Yep.
Yep. Yep. All about it.
So you think 0 point energies might be real? Yeah,
I mean, you look at, they used to say, well, they can't make fake diamonds. Well, they're making fake diamonds, and everybody that does it gets bought out. I mean, I've seen well-sourced media programs on these fake diamonds, that going to put De Beers out of business and all this other stuff. And we're finding out these so-called rare earth minerals. Well, guess what? They're not that rare.
Nope.
They're around, and we've just created all these bogus environmental rules to keep us from getting them, and then certain areas are allowed to get them.
A lot of the people said that was the biggest marketing scam ever.
What's that?
The diamond.
Oh, the diamond. Yeah. Absolutely, because they allow a certain amount to go out through their brokers, through their markets, through their marketeers. And it's basically, I think De Beers is the major controller of them.
Yes, it is. So 0 point energy, who do you think holds the technology?
I don't know. It'd have to be, we mentioned the industrial war complex, these multinational corporations.
Do you think it's Lockheed?
I think probably. They got some, they'd have to have input in it. They control it. But yet, they're still developing their jet engines and everything else through the process. But because that keeps their money. Once that 0 point comes out, they're all out.
Yeah.
So I feel like if they have it, they're holding on to it to keep us from getting it.
Interesting. Well, Tim.
Thank you, brother. It's been a pleasure.
I appreciate the time. It was an honor to have you here. I can't wait for the next hearing, and we'll be watching. How can people support you?
Well, you can follow me on Twitter at Tim Burchett. I don't think it'd be appropriate for me to ask for anything campaign related since we're talking stuff. So you can just Google all that if you want. But all right. But I appreciate it. I've been very fortunate in life. I never had money. Mom and Daddy never did. Just hardworking people and put themselves through school and fought in the war and all that. And I've had good health and good people around me. And I just knock on doors. When I run for office, I'm not the big media guy. And have a buddy of mine calls me every Sunday, usually with bad news. He sort of trades off information, but he told me one week, he said, you're probably one of the poorest guys in Congress. And I said, well, I appreciate that. Next week he calls me back and goes, I did some checking. You are the poorest guy from Tennessee, in Congress. And I said, well, I really appreciate that. I mean, we get a great salary, but it's kind of funny. It's just, it is very much a rich man's game. And for a system that allows, the Tim Burchetts of the world to run for office and hold, like I say, every night, I walk out and look at that dome over the Capitol. I think, wow, Charlie and Joyce Burchett's baby boy is a United States Congressman. And Mama didn't even have electricity. She was a senior in high school. As I told you, her brother got killed fighting the Nazis, and she flew an airplane during the Second World War, and Daddy fought in the Pacific against on Peleliu and Okinawa, and then went to China after the war and fought the communists, and then he worked at University of Tennessee for over 40 years. Got a brother and sister, and they're both good-looking and great athletes, very smart. I didn't get any of those attributes, so I just got lucky and got in the right place and married a beautiful woman and got a great daughter out of the deal, and I'm just very fortunate that my wife will say, I said, baby, about this Congress thing we were talking about running, and she said, honey, I got this, which meant she got the home front. So she does a good job too. So thank you, brother. I appreciate you letting me be on. It's been an honor, and thank you for everything you've done for our country and you're continuing to do. Because, brother, if we don't get the truth out there to folks, it's not going to happen.
It's my pleasure, and thank you for being here. And I want to say, I got some friends over there in Congress. You're one of them, and Eli Crane's one of them. Got a couple others, and I just want to say, I never realized how hard it is for you guys to get a real voice, and this was an important but more of a fun interview. I know there's a lot of other topics and concerns and issues and problems and just all kinds of stuff going on within our government and our country right now. And so I just want to offer it to you. If you ever need a platform, where you need to get some word out because the media isn't covering it, you got a home right here.
Thank you, brother. I appreciate you.
So keep
God
up the good
bless you.
fight. Thank you.
Hey everybody, I'm Shawn Ryan. Click here to subscribe to the Shawn Ryan Show YouTube channel for the hottest and most compelling interviews that you will not see anywhere else. I've also made a playlist of all the previous SRS episodes so they're easy to find. You can find that right here.